Hello, I'm Sabine Kehm, and you're listening to Beyond the Grid.
Hi everyone, Happy New Year. I think we can still say that. It's Tom Clarkson here with the second of two very special episodes of Beyond the Grid, presented by Bose Quiet Comfort 35.2 wireless headphones. It was Michael Schumacher's 50th birthday on January the 3rd, and to celebrate such a landmark, there's been a wealth of content across Formula One's channels dedicated to the seven-time champ. We kicked off Schumacher Week 7 days ago with a feature-length conversation with Ross Brawn, the man who engineered the German maestro throughout those incredible years of domination. This week, we're closing our celebrations with another fabulous guest. The person you're about to hear from is one of the few people to have witnessed the public and private sides of Michael Schumacher, having worked with him first as a journalist, then as his PR, and more recently as his manager. I'm talking about Sabine Kehm. She quizzed Michael with a dictaphone when he was winning championships for Benetton, and she worked alongside him when he was dominating F1 at Ferrari, and she continues to manage his business affairs to this day. She's known Michael for a long time, and she knows him better than most. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Sabine, welcome to Beyond the Grid. It's lovely to have you with us on what is a very special week, of course, Michael's 50th birthday. And on behalf of all of the listeners, I'd just like to say, keep fighting, Michael. He's in all our thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure Michael's family and Michael himself appreciate that a lot. It's been incredible, the amount of sympathy which came to them, and which, I don't know if you know that, but in the end, the family decided, since all this sympathy and this good energy came to them, they didn't just wanted to keep it, they wanted to send it out back again. So that's why we decided to create that Keep Fighting Foundation, which is really trying to continue Michael's charitable work, and that's what we're trying to do.
It's a fantastic thing. Well, look, let's talk about the great man, Sabine. I mean, when did you first meet him, and what kind of impression did he make on you?
Well, I have to unfortunately say it's quite a while ago. It's been at the German Grand Prix in '94. I've been a journalist then, and obviously a German journalist. So the German Grand Prix has been a big thing in all the print and also TV offices. I've been a writer. So I met him in the Hockenheim in '94, and my first impression, I mean, obviously I had read about him, I have watched him. He'd been present already in the German press, but that was the first year when he was kind of, finally there was a German driver maybe being able to win the Formula One World Championship, which was at that time something unimaginable in Germany. So I really remember our chief editor saying, wow, there's this guy, we need to go there now. So I kind of said, let me go. And but yeah, like I think everybody else at that time, or a lot of people still at the end of his career, I saw him as distant, reserved, cautious. But I always felt that the whole Formula One scenery was extremely interesting to describe as a journalist, because you had all these different characters, and Michael was clearly one outstanding character. You could see that then already.
And Hockenheim was very busy back in those days, wasn't it? Because the whole stadium section was full, and there was a lot going on, wasn't there? Was he an easy interview for the German media? How did you find when the dictaphone was on? How was he?
The funny thing is that I always felt, looking back as a journalist, I always felt he was easier with the British media, actually, because I think it's because if you're trying to explain something in your own language, you would like to be very specific and very nuanced, whereas maybe in another language, like English was Michael's, obviously not Michael's native language, it comes across more easy, because maybe you are not able to go in all these little perfect nuances. So I always felt that Michael's interviews in English sometimes were even stronger than the ones in Germany, because then he really sometimes tried to be so precise that in the end it didn't really come across. And well, it was not so easy. I really felt that he was. You could feel that he was a very, how should I say, strong character, but he was not easy to open, and that was then, and that was later the same, I think.
But you have a very interesting perspective on Michael, don't you? Because you've worked on both sides of the divide, if you like, the journalist that you've just described, but then, was it year 2000, you then go and work for Michael. So how different have you found the public and the private side of Michael?
I found it extremely different. I mean, it was really like two personas. And clearly Michael was always wanted it to have like this. He wanted to be a person public, the racing driver, being able to be followed and watched and whatever by everybody. And that was kind of his racing driver personality. And then there was a very strong feeling for privacy, and he never wanted to open up. He also needed that, and he had understood that he needed that privacy in order to refresh his batteries, because if you are in the center of attention over so many years, Michael has been fighting for the championship more or less onwards from 94 until the end of 2006, which is an incredible line of years. But that really takes a lot of energy away from you. So you really have to make sure that you also get it back. And for Michael, he understood, I think, quite early on that he really needed to have that, to divide these two lives, kind of. And he did it very consequently, like everything he did.
Methodically, I guess. He struck me as a very methodical person. Is that what he was like to work for?
It was extremely like this in working, but very different in private life. I mean, he was really a different kind of person in private. He was really very easygoing, not that methodically, really enjoying his life a lot, enjoying having fun a lot, enjoying being with friends and doing things which they would really then laugh about afterwards. So a really different persona. But I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that in order to arrive in Formula One, Michael being from this, let's say, a background that he was from, I mean, they never really had the money, and he would never have thought that he would ever arrive in Formula One. That was beyond thinking. And he learned from early on, from his childhood, that he had to deliver. When he's in this car or kart, and then later in this kind of karts he was driving, he really had always to deliver in order to still going, to be able to get a seat and to be able to have a cockpit. And I think that never really got away from him.
So what sort of Michael did you find in the year 2000? Because he'd had 4 really frustrating years with Ferrari, hadn't he? So he'd won the title with Benetton 94, 95, and then 6, 7, 8, 9 doesn't happen for various reasons. How did he deal with the disappointment of those years?
It was clearly a big thing, obviously. It was clear that the pressure was extremely high, and you could feel that right away. I mean, it was, in a way, I felt it was like a very decisive year, and I don't know what would have happened if the championship would not have happened. So
in 2000?
In 2000. I really had the feeling that I really don't know what happened, if they don't finally make it. So he was incredibly hardworking in that year, really not giving anything to him. He really put in everything. So it was a very demanding job also for me, even being used to be in the Formula One paddock. But obviously, as you say, it was a different side. And there were a lot of things in the background which you usually don't get to see as a journalist. And you only don't see that these drivers are being asked the same questions really 100 times over a race weekend. Because as a journalist, you're there maybe once or twice but there's all the other journalists too.
I'm sure you came up with original questions. You were better than that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was obviously there was something with the interviews I did before that suddenly he wanted me to work for him.
Well, actually, is that an interesting story? Just how did he approach you, and were you nervous about going to work for the most famous sportsman in Germany, one of the most famous sportsmen in the world?
Actually, I was, obviously, because otherwise I would not have done it. But originally, I was loving being a journalist. I really felt I was really feeling that I was in an extremely interesting environment. I did not only cover Formula One. I have covered Olympics and other stuff, and I loved it. So at the beginning, I was contacted by Michael's then manager, Willy Weber, who kind of, because he didn't want to stir up a story, approached me of asking me if I wanted to take the job for Ralph, funnily enough. And I clearly said, no, I don't want to.
Just for our listeners, that's brother Ralph, who at the time was at Williams, wasn't he?
Yeah. I don't even remember exactly. Yeah, and so I clearly and blankly said, no, I'm very nice, big honor being asked, but I'm not interested. And then Willie was kind of saying, you cannot only just say no, you have to, maybe you have to think about it. And I said, no, I'm happy where I am, and I love covering all that stuff. So eventually, when he felt that I was really saying no and kind of wanting to walk away, he said, he went into explaining more. And at some point I said, wait a minute, what you're explaining me, that doesn't fit to this English environment where Ralph is. It would really rather fit into this Italian environment. Are we speaking about Ralph or Michael? Because if you ask me about Michael, then the answer is not immediately no. Then I'm happy to think about it, because obviously, as you say, he has been a big star at that time already. And as a journalist, you always want to be and look behind the scenes, and you always want to understand what's really going on. So obviously, there was a big curiosity, frankly, in me to really be able to see that. And that's why it took me long, because I really never thought about doing the other side. But eventually, exactly that curiosity took over.
So what was it like you arrived at the perfect time in terms of course, they win the championship in exactly 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. What was it like just being on that juggernaut of success with Ferrari?
It was really an incredible journey. You can't really say that differently. And in its memories and moments, nobody can ever take away from me. And I really, really remember when Michael won eventually in Suzuka, which, I've never imagined such an explosion of emotions. It was really like an explosion.
From him?
From the team, from the whole team. He was really crossing the finish line, and really in the back of the garage, people broke down in tears. And when I saw that moment, I think only then I really understood what it meant to them, because they had tried for so long and for so many years. And there were some like mechanics and who had been around for, 25 years. And they were literally really crying in tears and then, but ashamed that they were crying. So we were trying to hide. And I've never seen something so touching, I have to say. And so that was the moment when I really thought, wow, that moment is even bigger than I had even expected it to be. And it was it clearly it will always be in my heart, obviously, to see those people.
Was it that race where there was that very emotional radio message?
Yes.
Corinna, we've
give Corinna
done
a big kiss from me.
Yeah.
That was it was an extremely emotional moment for everybody involved.
Did it elevate Michael in terms of the demands on his time? Did it elevate him to a different sphere of demand and position within the world of sport, do you think?
I think so, yes. I also think that he immensely grew in the years that he was driving Formula One, having this success and continuing to have that success. He developed massively also as a person. Obviously also being then married and having children, that all helps you grow, obviously. But also having that position within the team, and then also within the sport, and then also within the grades of any kind of sport in the world, that gave us a gravitas, which I think he poured out in a way over the years.
Did he relax when he got that first championship with Ferrari? Was it noticeable?
No, he did not relax. He did relax.
Was that Michael Schumacher? He couldn't relax.
No, he could actually, but as I said before, he was really relaxed. He was really relaxed. You would, for example, if you had watched him in his private environment, you would for sure noticed, being you, Tom, that he was much, let's say, slower with everything he did. Because in Formula One, everything needed to be so quick and boom, boom, and we had like schedules which were sometimes split down to 2 minutes, But then in his private environment, it was not like this. He was really relaxed. But when it came to like the Formula One and the commitment and the team and the driving and the delivery, then he was really never relaxed.
Was there one thing he had in his private life that helped him to relax? I've heard Mika Häkkinen, for example, talk about he had a tortoise, and the tortoise walks so slowly that it sort of, he'd get home from a race weekend and he'd see this tortoise walking slowly and everything would just slow down. Did Michael have something like that in his life?
Michael clearly had his family. I mean, Corinna, I mean, they were really, they were such a perfect couple, and they are still a perfect couple, if you ask me. And when he went home and the kids were coming, it was, Formula One was far away, and as I said before, he needed that privacy, kept private, in order to take the energy out of it. But that was always, for people like, looking at it from the outside, like friends or people like me, it was so obvious. His family has always been his kind of charger in a way.
And was he very competitive in terms of, did he have to win everything, even at home, playing tennis with the family, or?
Yeah, I'd say yes.
Was he like that?
Yes.
Everything.
He was clearly a competitive person, yes.
Yeah. And he had horses, didn't he?
Well, Corinna obviously has a lot of horses, and then had horses and loves them and loves reining, the sport that she does. But Michael was not so much into that, but because Corinna was so much into it, and he was always been so close to Corinna, he kind of shared that. Because he was always saying, I remember when he was, the first time when he, with Ferrari, when he retired, he said, Corinna has dedicated so much time to my passion. I want to give back to her and now dedicate my time to her passion. And that's what he did.
So you mentioned his retirement from Ferrari there, end of 2006. I remember that Brazilian Grand Prix, last race of that year. He went from, I think he got a puncture on the opening lap, didn't he? And he went from 19th to 4th, one of his best races, actually. How difficult was it for him to step away from Ferrari, the team that he'd had so much success with?
Well, it was clearly difficult because, it was really his passion. And yeah, as you say, he had so much success. But even more, it was such a close group of friends in a way that team was built into such a close relationship. Everybody had been so close, So it was really very difficult. But then at that time, because at that time, especially not anymore in 2006, but the years before, there was always racing testing. And Michael, he did a lot of testing because he wanted to make sure. And at some point also the tires were a little bit, maybe not the best or not the better ones. So he did a lot of testing, and that obviously was very draining. And in 2006, he already felt that a lot. The 2006 season, even if it would have been nearly another World Championship season, was very difficult for his physical condition. He had really sometimes neck problems, and we didn't want anybody to understand that, obviously, because it would have obviously influenced the championship. But it was clearly like this. So at that point, it was time for him to go.
2007, 8 and 9, he was away from Formula One. I think he did a bit with Ferrari, didn't he, sort of off and on in an ambassadorial role. But did you see a very different Michael in those 3 years?
Oh, clearly. He was really off. And I really remember going into this 2007 year, he really looked at me and said, don't even call me for the next half year. I'm not available for anything. And I could even understand it,
Did he mean that?
Yeah, he clearly meant that. He wanted to enjoy the time with his family, and he really wanted to enjoy the things he always wanted to do, and still did, but even wanted to do them even more often. But really clearly he wanted to spend time with his family and with his friends, and he didn't really have any desire to come back. Actually, he was really happy with his retirement. So it was more down to Ross than kind of putting the fire again, or maybe even to the test he did in order to replace Felipe when he had this problem
with
in
the
2009.
Neck. Was that the neck problem?
No, Felipe had that.
The crash in Hungary. But,
yeah.
But
no, the thing which came to his helmet, I don't know the word in...
the spring, was it?
Yeah, exactly, a spring. So he couldn't drive. So then Michael was asked to drive, and that was kind of... at that point, he felt, he was kind of, wow. And then he did it. He could not do it then because of his neck, but he did that test, and he saw that it. I mean, even of course he had this neck problem, so he could not have driven it then, but he felt that he could still drive. So
that's what reignited the fire, was it?
I think, yes.
So when he said to you, Sabine, I'm going to go back full time with Mercedes, how much of a surprise was it for you?
It was a full surprise, because we had several discussions then. It was always very clear that Michael did not have desire to come back. And then I remember very clearly that he called me and he said, you know what, Sabine, I just had a chat with Ross, and can you make me some pros and cons, maybe if I should come back or not? And I said, oh, I think, Michael, there's no need to do that, because I can hear from your voice that you already decided. And he said, no, I'm not. I mean, I need you. Maybe you can. And I said, well, it makes no sense. I feel that you are decided. I mean, you could really feel it immediately. So I was totally surprised.
There are more stories and memories from Sabine coming up in just a moment in part 2 of our podcast celebrating Michael Schumacher's birthday. If you've just joined us with this episode, then when you finish this one, I highly recommend that you listen back to last week's chat with Ross Brawn. He shared some wonderful insights into what made Michael so brilliantly fast. And it seems a lot of you enjoyed it too, and you shared your thoughts with us using the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid. Alex Griffin said, for me, Michael Schumacher is modern Formula One. He achieved so much in terms of poles and wins, but he also transformed driving with his unrivaled commitment to physical and mental fitness. And Michael Tick messaged us saying, Schumacher's last race at Spa marked the day I checked off visiting a race live for the first time with my father and brother. It was our shared dream to watch him live before the end of his career. All the best to him. Lovely. Thanks both, and keep your messages coming. For now, though, it's noise off, focus on, as we keep our Bose Quiet Comfort 35.2 wireless headphones close to hand to help us knuckle down and zone in on our work, so we can ensure that we keep you entertained and enlightened with the guests we've got coming up this season. Go to Bose.com to find out more about the QC35.2s, where you'll find out more information about the benefits of their up to 20 hours battery life, and how at the click of a button you can change the amount of noise cancellation to fit your environment. Meaning that whether you're at home or in the office, you get the same consistent sound quality pumping through as you do if you need to take the noise cancellation up a notch on a busy street. And if you're an Amazon Alexa or Google Assistant user, then you'll be pleased to know that the QC35.2s have been refined to give you direct access to both. Again, all accessible just at the click of a button. Now, let's get back to Sabine. By that stage, you've been working with him for 10 years. So did he rely quite heavily on you, just on the big decisions as well as the detail stuff?
Well, by then, I mean, until then, he had a manager, Willy Weber, who was obviously having a big role in putting him into Formula One and so on. And he was not really discussing the big the decisions with me. Obviously, we were working very close. And Michael loved to hear several... If he wanted to do a big decision, he wanted to hear several aspects. So he would discuss it with Willy. He would also always discuss it with Corinna. And then he would always discuss it also with me. But it was not like me giving him the advice in terms of that he then followed. He tried to collect various aspects when it really came to big decisions. And then he would try and kind of, make his mind.
How frustrated did he get during those 3 years with Mercedes? Well, he had that podium in Valencia, didn't he? He had the pole position in Monaco, but of course there was the penalty.
That was really a shame, because that could have been a lot of nice emotions again. Actually, the thing is that very, very quickly it became very clear that it would not turn out the way that he had hoped for, because in the first year I think there was a lot of the resources were not really there, and there was not really. It was clear that they would not be given as well. So that was obviously a little bit disappointing. But then at some point it was also, well, we have to cope with it and have to go on. And I think Michael fought a lot to convince the right people to really give more money into it and really make it a big team. Again, because
so you think Michael sort of laid the foundations of the Mercedes success that we're seeing today?
I'm maybe not neutral, but I think yes, because I think he really made it very clear that if you want to do it, you have to do it really full throttle, and not at the beginning it was a bit undecided, kind of. We came back, but not really, and they were kind of operating a little bit as a middle team and not really like as a top team. And I think the way that Michael kind of addressed this to some people helped them to really, see that it makes no sense to do it like this. And I mean, I think already in his last year, you could see that the things were coming. And it was quite obvious also to him that if he had stayed another year, and that would already be a much better year for him as well, because already in his last year, which was 2012, he was having the time. I mean, he was coming up, but at that time he just didn't. We discussed it actually, and I said, maybe you stay another year, then And he said, no, but I'm not having it. I don't want to spend so much time away from my family, and that was actually the reason why then. Knowing he could maybe have a better record at the end if he stayed another year, he just decided against it.
Was he as obsessive about the fitness aspects of it and everything else that comes with being a good driver? Was he as obsessed with it in the Mercedes years as he was at Ferrari?
I think the biggest difference between these 2 years, if you may compare them, is that in the 3 years that he had been away from the track after his first retirement, he had because he did a lot of things he really wanted to do, and he had understood in the 3 years that he is able to let loose but still get the focus on. Whereas before he never allowed himself to let loose because he was afraid that he would not have the focus on the same way like before. And he always had, as I said, that need to deliver. And in these 3 years, he understood he can still deliver even if I let go. So he enjoyed these 3 Mercedes years on a more personal level. He very, very, very quickly understood that it would not come out the way he would have wanted, and really tried to soak other things in. He was very open in the discussions, and he liked that way. And he then just enjoyed his time, driving and discussing with the team, trying to work with the engineers, with the mechanics, things he always loved. But before he could not have done them. So it was a different pressure, obviously. The pressure was totally different.
Now, I think a lot of racing drivers are mad. And I've got a little Michael story. I went and did a skydive in Dubai, a tandem skydive. Actually, I was jumping with Timo Glock. And we were just going towards the plane. And Michael is there. Didn't know he was going to be there. He was there. He came up in the same plane load as us. Brilliant. At doing the skydive thing. He was on his own, jumped out, and then we all got back down to the bottom. He dropped his parachute and went straight back up again. I mean, he was an obsessive character. Is that fair? Because he was going up and down all day as far as...
He was really up and down. I remember that a lot. And I think Timo's... The fact that Timo was skydiving was because of Michael.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
And we all had to skydive. I mean, I was skydiving in Dubai because, I mean, he was kind of influencing and because he was so much enjoying it. And the nice thing about Michael has always been that he loved to see other people having fun. So he loved to have fun, but he also loved to share that with other people. And that was something I really always liked on him so much, even then, in these very tense times, that, I mean, he never forgot about the other people having fun too. So, and it's true, maybe to a certain way you can say that's obsessive. Clearly with skydiving, if he liked something really, that was, I mean, he was really like, he could never stop. It was the same with karting, He was like, you had the feeling, or like when he was testing with Ferrari. I remember Friday evenings when mechanics would come up to me and say, how long will he still drive? And I don't know, it looks like another day, when maybe the test was originally scheduled until Friday only. And at the first years, you could still go on. And Michael was always going on because he could, when he had the feeling that you can still do more, he always did it.
Now, Rob Smedley told me on this podcast actually a few weeks ago that Michael was a brilliant team person. Win or lose, he would go around and shake the hand of every mechanic, not just on his car, but every mechanic, every engineer, even on Rubens's car or Eddie Irvine's car or whoever's it was. What are your experiences of the sort of human side of Michael?
Absolutely, I agree with Rob. I mean, and I know that he did that, but he also really he genuinely enjoyed the time with the team and also with the mechanics, because I think if Michael would not have been a Formula One driver, he would have probably been a mechanic or whatever. He would have had a job in some kind of driving / racing / mechanic environment. He loved that stuff, and so he never thought he's something different or special compared to the mechanics, and that's what the mechanics loved on him. They always felt like he's genuinely interested in what they do, but also who they are. So he was very often having chats with them about their families, and it was always a big thing. We had a big list of birthdays. He wanted to have the birthday of everybody, and we needed to really give Christmas wishes and presents to everybody. And it was always coming up Christmas. He would always, in length, think about what present to give to who. That was something which was really important to him, because he felt like he knew that he was demanding. But he felt like at least he wanted to also reward them in a way. And Michael has always been a very warm person, obviously, even in this racing environment. But obviously not. He didn't want that to be seen to the outside, because he felt that would kind of take away something of the competitiveness, at least in the outer perception. So, as I said, he very, very clearly divided those two personas. And he also, obviously, that sport at that level is also a lot of mind games and stuff. So he obviously wanted to come across as confident and strong and athletic. And that's also what is Michael as well. He's a very athletic, proud person. So he wanted to come across.
He absolutely nailed that confident persona, didn't he? And you talk to someone like Damon Hill, and I think he will say, yes, Michael was exactly what you've just described. But was he as confident in real life? Or did he have the same insecurities as the rest of us? I think
I'm not sure if he had the same insecurities, but he clearly has questioned himself all the time. And to me, that's one of the secrets of his success. He would never say or approach anything saying, I can do it anyway, because I've proved it a lot, and I proved it all the time, and I can do it. He would always kind of doubt himself and look into himself if it's still there. And to me, that's one of the real things, the real points which made him so strong. And once he said to me, the funny thing is, when I go into something, I always have the feeling, somewhere of a negative feeling. I'm not sure if I can really do it. I have to prepare 100%. And then when I do it, suddenly there comes this confidence while I do it. And that kind of, carries me away. And that's probably in a way that, that's probably how he did it. But he certainly was questioning himself a lot, and clearly also defining that as something he needed to improve.
Did he ever talk to you about rivals, other drivers on the grid, other people he'd raced against? Did he ever talk about the people he really respected or didn't respect, or just did he ever talk much about rivals? Or was it more about the car?
No, it was really more. We talk a lot about the team and the environment we were working in together. He didn't speak so much about of course he did that as well, but no, he did not kind of prepare to a race in looking at the other people. He really needed to know that he is prepared the best way, and then the rest was kind of, okay, then let's see who's bringing it on the track, kind of. So in his whole preparation to something, he was trying to even to really not look so much to even if he did that, obviously he knew exactly what they would go to, but I think he didn't let them go into his mind.
So sort of in conclusion, Sabine, how do you feel Michael changed Formula One?
I think that he's been given, for me, I think Formula One is really the pinnacle of motorsport. It has to be, it is the playing field of kind of the gladiators of our modern times. And I think Michael clearly has been the leading gladiator for so many years. And I think obviously he's given two things to the sport. One is that really he was the star, and everything was kind of centered around him. He was either the story if he had lost a race, or he was the story if he had won it. And at the same time, I think a lot of people understood that there was also the second part of Michael, and clearly Michael didn't want them to be so close to this other persona. And that was something which also was really interesting for the people. I think he really brought Formula One to a level that it was coming into the living rooms of average people, whereas before, at least that's the case in Germany, and whereas before that was kind of seen as a playing field of some people who are, a little bit crazy, and it's a cool sport, but you cannot really take it serious. And Michael kind of brought that thinking into these people there, so that he brought the sport into their living rooms. If I'm clear here.
No,
I don't think I am.
No, Sabine, you are clear. But I think it's fascinating that Germany fell in love with Michael in a way, really, that they haven't fallen in love with any other German drivers since. Why do you think? What was it that he had that these other guys haven't?
I think there's two aspects of it. One is that, I don't know if that's the case also for other countries, but I think in Germany that's really the case. I think the first one whoever achieves something really outstanding is always loved in a way more, or has a bigger impact. And the other ones are just kind of the next ones. And Michael clearly has been the first one. And maybe Stefan Bellof, or who was really a great driver too, but unfortunately, he couldn't show that. Maybe he would have been the first one. It would have all been very different. But Michael clearly was the first one. And it was really, as I said, in my first year, it was kind of, wow, there was this astonishment around, wow, there's a German driver being able to be world champion. Wow, we have to watch now, Yeah. And the second thing is also that Michael really came from a very average environment, and I think a lot of people could just really relate to him. He was not the son of a rich family or something. He really had worked his way up very intensely, and he had a lot to work to be able to arrive where he arrived and achieve what he achieved. And also this, I think that the people liked that. So he was one of them.
Man of the people.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. This might sound a strange question, but was he lonely? And the reason I'm asking that is Fernando Alonso obviously retired at the end of 2018. And one of the reasons he cited for retiring is that he didn't have many friends, because his whole life, really, since he was 18, had been so focused on Formula One. And then the moment you become successful in Formula One, you're put on a pedestal that makes you quite inaccessible to other people because you're famous. And as a result, he said, I don't have many friends, and it is actually really lonely being up there. Do you think Michael would relate to that situation, or did he have a great...
No, clearly not in my view.
No, okay.
I as I said, he really had that family. Corinna and the kids, and they've been together since really young. So I think from family-wise, he was not at all. He really was, and still is, very close with his family. So that is the one thing. And the second thing is that Michael managed, and I really think that's a very nice thing to say, he managed to have friends from his childhood until now. So there is people like Peter Kaiser, for example, who now follows Mick, his son, everywhere. He's one of Michael's closest friends, more or less from karting days in Kerpen, where everything started. And he had some other people, and still has, who always... That's the nice thing as well, because they have always been around, and they've also told him, hey, calm down, you may be a star, but you're still from Kerpen, so shut up and have a drink and whatever. So, and that was nice. He enjoyed that a lot, and he knew how precious that was, and he kept that. So he has a bunch of close and very good friends.
And are any of those friends racing drivers, the sort of Jean Alesi's of these world?
Jean Alesi is obviously a friend of his. But I mean, these friends I'm speaking now as really, they're coming from Cap and from the kart track in Germany where he grew up, and that was really like one being his former mechanic, and you know, so really childhood friends, you know, and that's something which I think not a lot of people can say, and that was always very important to Michael, and that's why I would never say he was or is lonely.
Mm-hmm. So legacy. Let's just talk about Michael's legacy. What do you think that is in a Formula One context?
Well, I think he's been the epitome of the sport. I mean, he's defined the way that people would nowadays say a Formula One driver needs to be. I mean, he's defined the driving, the driving itself. I mean, on the track when you're kind of alone. Then for me, the definition of how you work with a team and how important it is to really be inside and really understand everything in order to then give the right direction or find the right questions, which is also very, and even more, obviously, then find the right answers to those questions. Fitness level, I also think that Michael clearly defined that. If you look at these young drivers, they're all super fit, and I think he defined the role of or the role model of a modern Formula One driver.
How obsessed with fitness was he? I mean, we hear that he was super fit, but I mean, was he in the gym the whole time? A bit like Ronaldo, the football player, is apparently. He
was clearly in the gym every day. I mean, not all the time, but he would train every day, and he was. I don't know if you call that obsessed, but he also liked it. You know, I mean, of course, sometimes the neck machine, he hated it sometimes because that's purely and really boring. But he liked a lot of other sports, so he loved that. But he was clearly, it was daily routine, and for him really important. But also, I think also important in terms of. Still, the Formula One driving, and at that time when you had to drive so much, was also really draining, you know, for the body.
That is fantastic, Sabine. Thank you Sabine, that was a lovely chat. What fabulous insights from Sabine. The take-home message for me is that while Michael might have come across as an automaton when he was racing, there was always a caring and conscientious side to him that we, the fans, didn't always get to see when he was in his pomp. Thank you, Sabine, for being so open. That was a fascinating chat. And keep fighting, Michael. All our thoughts are with you. Well, that concludes our Schumacher specials, and Beyond the Grid is now taking a few weeks holiday before coming back ahead of the new season with more conversations, more insight, more intrigue from the great and the good of Formula One. Please remember that you can contact us at any time using the F1 Beyond the Grid hashtag, or you can tweet me at Tom Clarkson F1. We loved hearing all your feedback on the Ross Brawn episode, and we're delighted that so many of you enjoyed it. And don't forget, if you're new to the show, there's the whole back catalogue to enjoy. What are you waiting for? For now, though, thanks for tuning in. Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 in association with Audioboom. Until next time, keep it flat out.